Well, it's really great to have people from all these different churches and backgrounds, as we've just seen. And we see this very much as just us sort of facilitating a conversation together. It really isn't that we've got the answers and you haven't, a million miles from that. And it's not that there's one way of doing things. So, okay, we will be sharing some thoughts, we will be kicking some things off, but it's really, I think, just to sort of help each one of us to sort of share our experiences. We hope that and pray that we'll all be able to learn from one another. But there's just a few things that I just wanted to say at the beginning, to first of all, just to remind us of the big picture, and then just to give very briefly some general principles that I think should apply whatever our context. And I heard somebody talking recently on this same sort of subject and saying, I think there's a lot of parallels, although there's a lot of differences as well. If we think about when the people of God were in exile and came back to Jerusalem, the books of Ezra and Nehemiah, and then the prophetic books that came in for that period as well, I think there's such a lot of lessons we can learn. So I'd encourage you to go away and think about some of those things, because on the one hand, you've got Nehemiah coming to a situation that was quite difficult. You had a lot of people who were very discouraged or were finding life hard. He had a lot of opposition. Now, we won't necessarily get opposition, but we will quite likely find that some people in our churches don't necessarily agree with decisions we have to take. You know, I've heard many people say, well, some people are on this end of the spectrum, for example, why aren't we meeting yesterday? And others saying, oh, it's too soon. So there's a lot of the human things that we see in the books of Ezra and Nehemiah. I think we could take a lot of encouragement and wisdom from, but not just because of understanding what makes people tick, because people are the same, even though the culture and the age is different, but because actually God called them to a great work. And you see that so clearly, don't you, in those two leaders, Ezra and Nehemiah. Particularly when he faced some discouragement and opposition, Nehemiah said, no, God has called me to a great work. And so although it is right that one of the things we'll be looking at is how do we help people, how do we get alongside people, I think it's important for ourselves, and when we're seeking to help those in our congregation, that we help people to see we're not just doing this for ourselves. Or we're not, although people are extremely important, actually there's a bigger reason outside of ourselves, that we're in whatever way, in our own context, looking to fulfill the calling of God. God has instituted the church. God wants to use the church to demonstrate his love to the world, and that really, really hasn't changed. So when things are a bit uncomfortable or a bit confused or a bit difficult, firstly for ourselves, but also for those in our congregation, to prayerfully but gently say, Lord, help me to raise people's sights. Help us to say, look, let's remember what we're about here. We're about a great work. And so I think that overarching vision, I think, can help people when people don't always like what's happening. And if you think about what happened in those situations, Nehemiah acted with a lot of wisdom. He did very well, but he also was very happy to have the input of the prophets Haggai and Zechariah, and their job was primarily to say, remember who you are, remember who God is, remember what God has called us to. We're fallible human beings. We forget who we are. We forget what we're called to. We easily get bogged down in people, in detail. We easily get bogged down in pastoral situations. So I think if in that situation they needed that reminder, then I think quite likely so do we, and so do some of the people that we're seeking to lead. So I hope that's just an encouragement for you and a little takeaway to look at the sort of things that were said and done and the way they were said and done in those books. And then just the second thing I wanted to say about just three sort of principles, because we had these bullet points: helping rebuild people's confidence, creating safe environments, and then thirdly, within restrictions, trying to create meaningful experience for people. And so just three principles. With the first one, rebuilding people's confidence, I've already said it in a way. We've talked about Ezra and Nehemiah, but to say, Lord, give us good pastoral wisdom. Help us to get alongside people. Help us to communicate well to people. Whatever it is you might have to communicate. For some here, it'll be we're going this way or in this time scale. For other people, no, we're for whatever reasons we're doing it that way. But whatever it is, to really communicate people as well as we can, to understand those people who might be struggling more than we are. One of the exhortations that we're given in the epistles is help the weak. And that's what Jesus did, wasn't it? By coming to earth in the first place, he helped us, the weak. He came alongside us. And so we've got that mandate and that responsibility to just to think ourselves in other people's shoes, whatever it is. And to some degree, I think that would help rebuild people's confidence. And then talking about creating safe environments, I would say to be safe but gracious, not safe and officious. There are some people who love rules and love, well, we've got to do this, but we can't do that. And whilst that is true, there will be some legal requirements or some good practice that your church might have adopted. To say it with a good heart, to do something with a smile, to do something in a reassuring manner, really, really helps people. I mean, just one small example, we've been having restricted numbers back for some time, and we've decided voluntarily to ask if we can take people's temperature as they come in. One of these guns you hold up to the forehead. But it's been an absolute requirement of the people who are holding those guns, those temperature guns, they do it with a smile and, it's okay. We have to do these things. And not a single person actually has objected to it. That may yet happen, but so far not a single person has objected to do it because it's being done with grace. And so I think we can be safe, but I think safety with graciousness is much better. And then thirdly, final thing I wanted to say about trying to create a meaningful experience when there's certain things we can't do, again, for ourselves first, but also on other people. Let's focus and encourage people with what we can do. We're so conscious. When I said to my wife beforehand, what would you say to some of these things? The first things that often come to mind are, we can't do this yet, we can't do that yet, or we've got to do that with this restrict. And to encourage people to make the most of what we can do. We're called to be a thankful people. We're commanded to be a rejoicing people. So to help people to focus on we can meet, we are allowed to do this. We are allowed to stand, in worship. Depending on what the culture is of your church, we are allowed to clap. We are allowed to raise our hand. Whatever it might be, just helping people to make the most of the things that we can do. So I hope those little bullet points are helpful. That really is the only sort of talking to you that we're planning to do. So what we wanted to do now, if Paul first and then myself, just to share a little bit about very briefly what our own context is. So for example, are we meeting, have we already been meeting for a while? Are we streaming to YouTube? Whatever it is, do we have live worship or recording? Just very briefly what our context is. And then firstly, in our context, what has helped and worked well, which might encourage somebody else, or what our challenges have been. So do you want to kick us off, Paul, and then we'll take it in turn to
yeah, I'll try not to speak too long, because I want to keep, we want to make time for people. But yeah, I mean, I said to Rob, I find this whole area quite challenging myself. I'm not sure that I'm offering any particular easy way forward. You know, over the last year, we've been live streaming on a Sunday, which is, you know, in terms of social media technology, that has been a real leap for us. We have a 10:30 stream service, and we have been able to have a congregation with that. So we have people come along while we live stream, got a live band. Obviously, they're not supposed to sing, although we're face masks, so I'm not sure if they do. Because of the nature of our building, we average about 40 because we can only really get a maximum of 50 in, socially distanced, even when all the seats are taken. Of course, all the seats are never taken because individuals will take up 2 seats themselves. I think that issue of singing is a really crucial one in our context. You know, the fact that people are technically not allowed to is a real disincentive. Although it's interesting that we are finding people coming out and really appreciating just being in the building. And, you know, I suppose as a church, we tend to disparage our building, but actually just being in the building, being in something familiar with others has been really encouraging. We have to try and be careful about too much, well, the social interaction. Obviously, people do talk to one another afterwards, particularly outside. But I think that's fine. I suppose in terms of the way forward, I mean, as an Anglican church, we've relied on our guidance nationally. So we've been very careful to implement what we've been told, and generally that's been helpful. Beyond June, we're not sure what that will involve. If social distancing going and we can actually fill the building with people, that would be great. But whether they can sing, whether they will want to come back. We did a survey last summer, and this was one online, so it didn't include some of our older folk who aren't online. And a third of people said that they weren't comfortable about coming back to church in the short to medium term. So that's an issue. We've experimented with different ways of doing stuff. Smithills, our church that meets in St. Peter Smithills Dean School, has done a couple of drive-in services, which have worked really well, which has allowed them to meet without, within the limitations of social distancing or whatever. I think in terms of the challenges we face, one of the key ones, of course, is particularly thinking about those folk who have not been able to engage over the last year. And certainly, from what we've been trying to keep in touch with phone calls, we've actually sent out Greek cards just to say, we're thinking about you. And they've gone down really well. But, it's a big step for many of them, I think, to come back. And what are they coming back to? It's still very unclear. One of the things that has brought its own challenge for us is that we have our live stream main service at 10:30, and we want to continue that because clearly we've got an online presence which we didn't have before. But it does mean that we previously had a 9:30 and 11 o'clock. I suppose the implication is the 9:30 will become a 10:30, but the 11 o'clock, which was more of a liturgical service, suddenly is not able to happen at 11 o'clock in quite the same way. And that's causing, us concern because we don't want to alienate people, and particularly older folk who generally come to that service who have been less connected. So in terms of communication, one of the things we're doing is we're phoning them all up, talking it through with them. We can consult with the 9:30. So that element of I think communication is vital. And recognizing that we're coming into a situation where church life will be very different, and already we're looking at how that change for us for that service in the morning will bring fresh opportunities, particularly of making it much more missional than perhaps it's been able to be before. So there's that, but there's a lot of uncertainty and work to do, I think. And alongside of that, we've been really trying to emphasize the importance of life groups, small groups. We have them. They've continued and been really helpful. And we've had what we call neighborhood church, where we divided the electoral roll, our membership, into so everybody was linked to a neighborhood church where they could have connection with others and look after one another. And that's happened, that's worked, some better than others, but that whole thing of connecting smaller groups is something that we're also looking at, how we can really develop that. And again, I think one of the challenges that it's not easy to start groups over Zoom. I was on the HCB leadership conference last night, and I've heard this before. Nicky Gumbel has said he thinks Alpha on Zoom is better than in person. And in many ways, you can do a lot more, but I think there's also a challenge in doing that. But I think just being able to get back to sharing space together will be very important. So, yeah, there's lots of new things, lots of challenges there, but yeah, we just wait. I think one of the key things is we keep saying we're waiting on this guidance, because we want to know what sort of rules we need to live with and share that as soon as possible. So again, that's communicating that is not easy when there's uncertainty, but it's God's church, so I feel encouraged that we will find the path through.
Thanks, Paul. Let me, I won't, a lot of what you said, we'd say exactly the same thing, so I'm not going to repeat any of that. I think a couple of extra things that come to mind for us. I mean, we've been having small numbers back and live streaming as well, looking obviously to increase the numbers as we're allowed. It's sometimes been quite difficult, well, not difficult, but when restrictions need to be enforced. So, for example, we need to say to somebody, "Oh, I'm sorry, you're not wearing your mask properly," something like that. A lot of people find that very hard to challenge someone. So we've thought very carefully to have the right people to do that challenging. Like I said before, somebody who do it graciously, but somebody who's a little bit more confident. So to ask the right people to do that in the right way. Just a few little things that have helped with some of these challenges. This very much depends on what your setup is, your building and everything. But what we've done with our chairs, although of course we've had to have bigger spaces between rows, and we've had to widen the aisles, we've sort of set up the chairs in the same sort of arrangement as normal, in that we've got a middle block and side block, obviously so much more spaced out. So it looks a bit more normal than just one chair here, two chairs there, another one over there. And then we've made it very clear that although all the chairs are set out like this, that you need to leave a certain number of chairs gap. And that has really helped to create a bit more of a normal atmosphere of what people come into. It's certainly very much to help anybody who is helping to lead or take part in the service, anything from the front, that it looks more normal. So personally, that's helped us. I've already said about emphasising what we can do, and I think the only other thing that I'd add to what Paul has said, that wherever possible, and it's very much again depends on your style of service, that of course with all this online stuff, people easily feel remote. So anything that helps people to feel I'm part of this, or if there's any way that people in the congregation can participate in a Bible reading or prayer or some other contribution like that. Of course, it can't always be live, but anything, not necessarily, you can't have every person, of course, but if people see, oh yes, this person has done something, if it feels more like we are doing the service in some way, I think that just helps to mitigate a little bit of the distance and the alienation. And it obviously very much depends on your context as to how that works out. Okay, so what we're doing now is, if I could pick on one person to sort of either comment on what's been said or to say any other things, any additional things that you'd like. And then after that, I'll ask that person to pick on somebody else. So Jessica, because I know you a little bit and you're unmuted. Sorry about that.
Well, yeah, we've been meeting in the building for probably since, I don't know, October. But the challenge we have is that we're very limited on numbers because of the social distancing, and obviously people have to book online. So originally we did it anticipating that predominantly for those who may have been on their own, so they wouldn't feel disconnected, etc.
Yeah.
Some of those people actually have chosen not to, although we've kept connected with them by ringing, they've chosen not to. There was also a certain group who obviously enjoy meeting. But yeah, I think our concern really is that unless they say social distancing goes, or it goes down to 1 meter, it's just the challenge of how many people we can actually get in the building. And we also face the same challenge. I mean, people want to sing, don't they? And in that possible way, and they want to talk to each other, and it's really hard when you encourage connection and you know you're a family, and suddenly you're saying we can't do these things at the moment. It's like unnatural. So I can relate to what's being said, because we've had the same challenges, and trying to be gracious, lovingly, and sending even loving reminders when people have booked on, just to remind you at the watch party on Sunday. But so I think that's the challenge for us, really. And it's a bit of unknown as to, after the 21st of June, there's very little at the moment direction as to what that's going to look like, is it?
Yes. Yes.
I think just to say, I mean, I think there's a lot of an issue of expectation or managing that, because I think increasingly with the way things are going from the media, I think people will be thinking, oh, well, once the 21st of June is done, the next Sunday, it's back to normal. And we all know that it's going to take weeks to really, I think, to get to that point. But
yeah. So in any general communication, which obviously we don't want to be negative, but if anything, helping people not to be unrealistic. So if we are allowed to do more than we perhaps guessed, then great, that's a bonus.
Yeah.
But rather than people being disappointed, I think that would generally help. And I don't know about you guys, but we have to communicate in so many different ways now. You know, some people read emails, some people don't. Some people are on Facebook, some people don't. So I'm not the main man in charge of our communication now, praise God, but the guys who are, they have to send the same message out in so many different ways to try and catch everybody. Jessica, anything else that you wanted to comment on or add, or if not, could you ask somebody else to share their experience?
I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but the lady has got a hand up. I'll volunteer.
Hey, Hilary.
Sorry, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really participating as somebody who's involved in small groups in 2 churches currently, yes. And what we're doing, Mark Cowling's church on Plodder Lane, in order to do the English classes, and we've been facilitating these since January, they've got these Perspex screens. So we've actually been able to take, because it's not a huge building, but we've been able to do the job club, the food bank, and the English class by having the screens between, making like a corridor. So we've had tables facing in with screens between them, so the students can face one another. But obviously they're safe, because not only have they got masks on, they've got these Perspex screens. So we can actually take a group of 12 in a comparatively small space, with me sort of standing back and the corridors going down like that, with no more than, you know, if it's a family group of 3 or 2 or 1 person separate at the end of a table. And that's been amazingly successful. And all you need is a dozen screens, which are comparatively cheap to buy. So that is just something to throw in if you're thinking of small groups, which is being extremely helpful. And we're doing the same at Bridge now too.
Excellent, thank you. Hilary, would you like to nominate somebody else to share?
Yes. Can I just pick on someone?
Yes.
Somebody I know, Gail. Hi, Gail. We used to work together at ZAC. So let's hear Gail's point of view.
Well, it probably makes sense to join Helen to join with me, because John knows more of the technical stuff than I do anyway. So yeah, we've had one service back in the building, which was a baptismal service, and very limited to numbers, just to the baptismal candidates and immediate families. But yeah, we are very small buildings. I think we get about 6 people in. So yeah, we've been online and pre-recorded. John's looking into this is why I said he needs to talk, because he's looking at the live streaming stuff and I don't understand it. So I'll let him explain that.
Yeah, I mean, we do pre-recorded. We put it out on Facebook and YouTube. But one of the things that we've done, which I'm not sure how many people are doing it, but it's kind of a hybrid, so that we have a Zoom link every week as well. So people all watch together on Zoom. So you can actually see the other people at the side of the screen. People can comment live. And then afterwards, even some of the people who watch on Facebook or YouTube will switch into Zoom, and we have a virtual coffee lounge and a chat afterwards. So we're trying to encourage that connection. In terms of moving forward, we've said, really, with the restrictions, the things that we want to do, you know, we want to gather, we want to hug one another, we want to sing, we want to do those things. That if we can't do that, but people are comfortable with the teaching online and the Zoom connection, and maybe, you know, meeting people at our coffee shop on kind of small group basis during the week and things like that, then we'll encourage people to connect with one another outside of a Sunday. Because actually, we've even talked about the first Sunday where we're all able to gather together, about having nothing planned other than people chatting to one another and drinking tea and coffee together and really fellowshipping.
Yeah.
Because actually that's the most important bit. We're giving outdoor church a try on Sunday. So we're going to meet in the lane at the side of church, which is our land. And if the weather's great, we might actually get to do some singing outdoors, which is allowed. And then we'll go off into the park in smaller groups to do some kind of activity reflection or something like that. Pentecost, which is the first Sunday after catering establishments allowed to reopen. We're going to do a coffee shop church, so we're going to turn the church completely into the coffee shop like it would be during the week, and open it all day so that people can come and go. Well, you know, most of the day, 10 till 3, something like that. And the idea being that people can just book a table, they can sit with friends up to 6 indoors. The service on a loop that just keeps looping round. So you come, you sit down, you have something to eat. Again, that's about looking, as Paul said, how we become a bit more missional. You know, might you be able to invite someone who wouldn't normally come to church to a coffee shop, and we kind of doing it as a bit of experiment with trying various different models, and to evaluate that. And we've said that before September, it's all an experiment. We'll do different things at different times. And we've prepared people for that and said, come September, we might have a better idea of what works, what doesn't, but don't expect it to go back to how it was a year and a half ago.
We've also done bags, Lent bags, Christmas bags, so different activities for the week. Like an advent calendar, the Christmas one was ish, encouraging people to connect with one another.
Gail, do you want to talk a little bit about that, because you've put them together and you've got plans going forward, haven't you?
Oh, no.
The Christmas ones were a bit complicated, but the Lent ones worked really well. It was just about connecting with each other, and with communities. So just little ideas of things they could do. The name of somebody to pray week, somebody to to connect with in some way for the next 2 or 3 see how that goes moving forward, because we found that there's some people who have connected online who are kind of on the fringe of church and don't generally come on a Sunday, but they're connecting online. And sometimes that's because they work funny hours or they have health issues, all sorts of reasons. So we're looking at how we can keep them connected in as well. And hopefully these packs going forward will be one way of keeping them in the loop and feeling like they are really part of the church.
We've been open during the week though, haven't we?
Yeah, with all the social action that we do during the week, there's been quite a core group of people who are volunteering for various things and seeing one another, the staff team. So that's helped to create a sense, continue to create that sense of community, because although not everyone's been able to meet, you've been able to meet with a few, and then they've met with others, and so we've been able to make sure everyone's connected in at some point.
You've got some really good ideas in there. I mean, it's not that everybody has to do the same set of ideas,
No.
but I think my sort of takeaway from what you guys have said is to be thinking outside the box, to be thinking creatively, and pastors are not necessarily good at thinking creatively. That's where. So some are. I mean, the way our marriage works is that my wife is much more creative than me, but then she's terrible at implementing it. So I take her ideas and then implement them. So I'd encourage you, whoever you are, whatever type of person you are, please don't feel that it's all down to you. You know, if there's something you're not good at, you know, find somebody else who is. I would be, for me, I would be asking other people. I'd think of a few people and say, you know, what about you? What about you? What about you? Not that necessarily I'd take on all their ideas, but you know, we're supposed to be a family, aren't we? We're supposed to be a team. So don't feel the pressure that you shouldn't, but get people who can think a little bit differently for these circumstances. So that's some really good ideas coming out of there. Claire, could I ask you any particular things that you've done found helpful or challenging?
Yeah, so I think like what you've all said, we've hit the same challenges. I think one of the challenges for us was as soon as we went back to live services, that we use a system called Church Suite so that people can book in, that we opened the booking on Monday morning at 9 o'clock, and by 3:30 all the seats had gone. And we were really mindful that in that same week we'd opened the grocery store in partnership with the Message Trust. So we'd had all, you know, non-Christians coming through our footfall, and we had nowhere, we couldn't even say to them, well, you know, we'd love to see you at church, because all the space had gone with, I guess, with our church family. So we knew that we needed to create space. So we then went to 2 services, which is brilliant, but it's brought its challenges, because we've got a much smaller team who are back in church, who are willing to serve. It meant that we had to change the times of our church services, because in the afternoon our Farsi congregation used the building, and people have already gone through enough change with COVID that to change the first service from 10:30 to 10 was quite a challenge. But you know, people have been brilliant in stepping up and just being prepared to, you know, stay that whole time. But we're really aware that they're tired, because we're relying on them each week to come, you know, 8:30 to start setting up, and they're not getting home really till 2:30. So we're really, it's that balance of creating space, but then you don't want your volunteers burning out when they're going to work on a Monday morning. So that's been a real challenge. I think what we're planning to do, hopefully on the 23rd of May, is go back to 1 service, because with the new guidance that will come out, we're hoping, is that we'll be able to sit 2 family groups together, or groups will be able to sit in groups of 6. So that should alleviate that. But the other issue we've had is we have about 80 children that come to the generally come to the service. So we've not been able to do any kids work within church because we don't have the space, and it just seems unfair to open spaces for kids and say, right, you know, well, the first 20 you can go into kids work, but the rest of you, you've got to stay in the main service. So we took the decision that actually we won't resume children's, what we used to do, like our kids church, until we can accommodate all the children that want to go. So again, that brings in some people, I guess the parents of children who can sit through church are okay with it, but then there's those that, you know, those that have got children who are more challenging. Or I remember my boys are 24 and 21, and Phil, my husband, who's currently on Zoom doing Alpha upstairs, you know, he was always either preaching or he was leading worship. So I was left with the kids on my own, 2 boys that, you know, if I let go of them, they'd be running to the front to see the dad. And so I'm really aware of the tension that brings having children in church. It's the reception. So yes, I think for us, we've done kids packs and things like that, but we also, I don't know, but just be interesting to see how you've coped with having, suddenly you've had children in the service the whole way through. And to be fair, they've been absolutely brilliant. But as our older congregation have come back, they're not so keen to have the children in the whole time. And it's just all the challenges it brings, isn't it?
Yeah, I was wondering if somebody would raise the question of children. I mean, I think we can't. I don't just mean our meeting, but none of us can actually solve those problems at the moment, can we? So it's just really praying to help in whatever way we can, and helping people to understand. You know, and each of us will probably come up with a different solution. Julia, what was it you wanted to add to this? You're still muted at the moment.
Sorry, yeah. I'd just like to add, we're not as blessed with 80 children. We have maybe 15 or 20, and we've been giving the packs out. But the older young people, if you like, sort of just pre-teens, they've been very keen to get involved in the community. And at Easter, they arranged to they asked for donations of cream eggs, and they wrapped them up in cellophane with a gospel message and left them randomly on doorsteps in the community. And that was their idea. So they owned it, and it was very, very successful, and the community really, really appreciated it. So, you know, you don't have to be in church to be with the children. You can do something in the community.
That's really good. And I think, I mean, certainly for us, I think one or two of the things that we've started doing for the first time in the last year, in some way, we'll probably carry on with later. So it's things like that. You think, well, actually, we could be doing this anyway.
I don't think we'll drop anything. We've done so many things. I mean, I try not to repeat what other people have said, but we've done the live services, we've done the pre-recorded, and so we want to do live streaming, but we haven't got the Wi-Fi facilities yet. But when we do the pre-recorded, you've got, well, we also send out a pack to those who aren't online. So 30, we call them the 30. They get a pack of the sermon, the readings, the prayers, reflection, and a notice sheet, and they go out every week. So you have to do your sermon early so it can be printed and sent out. Then you pre-record it, and then you preach it on Sunday. So that's quite hard to keep up. But so we're hoping live streaming we can just do. We don't have to do the pre-recording. But I don't think we'll drop that because, like everyone said, we're gaining so many more people online who are joining us. Yeah, it's we were also doing the eco church thing. We're trying to get our award for that, the first one, and that's involving a lot of the young people as well, because that's something they're very interested in. So we're gathering. It's a multi-age group where we're talking about what we can do for eco church, and that's very exciting. And that can be done outside as well, with the bug boxes and
Yeah.
and bug hotels and things like that. And we're actually building. I'm not sure how it works. An eco toilet. We've been given a grant to and the youth are organising that, researching it, resourcing it, and project managing it with supervision, of course. So that should be good.
I won't imagine what that might look like. I'm sure it's
I don't-
better than my current imagination, actually.
I'm hoping so.
I won't go there. Any of you, I'm just conscious of time, any of you guys who, we don't all have to say something, but any of you guys who haven't yet had an opportunity to say, is there something you'd like to add in, Ian?
Well, yeah, again, without duplicating what's gone before, I think there's a couple of things that we've been doing at Harwood, which, but also I think there's a challenge. So if I could do it quickly. First thing is that at Harwood, we've had the hub, and the hub, it started off as all great things do. Somebody left a box of books at the door. And somebody came and borrowed a book, and somebody brought back, and we suddenly realized that people they needed resources. And this has now turned into, if you go past the front of our building, we now have a large wooden shed, it's temporary, but a semi-permanent structure in which there are books which people have donated and have been bagged for 5 days, so we could make sure that they're safe. And people can come and get books, and they can get kids' clothes, and they can get toys, and that hub has just grown a whole new community to be part of our church family, who are just itching. They keep telling us, when you open, we'll be there. And I think that's, what we realize that there are a number of people who are not coming back. But the excitement is we've got all of these people who are just itching for us, to be able to open the Harwood building, which will be late because obviously it'll only get opened when it's finished. And it opens on the 10th of July, which is the date, it's dedication day. But I think that's great. And all it was a box at the door, and that grew into 2 boxes at the door, which grew into, this is something we should, and 2 very committed non-church members who met with some church members and said, can we do that? And the whole thing just grew. And I think, talk about what, God at work in the community. And, we have a vision at Harwood, which has motivated us in building the new building and all the rest of it. God is at work in our community. Our job is not to take God to the community. Our God is to look out into the community and see what God's doing and to get out there and do it with him. That's very much our vision. So I think that's the first thing I'd want to say that's gone really well. The second thing has been, again, we're going to do the online, is keeping going. The community that we've now built up who worship with us. We have the radio in the morning. Because we do the radio, we take that as our morning service. So everybody listens to that. And then we come on to Zoom after that with our mugs of coffee, and we sit and discuss it. And, there's a number of preachers on here, so I won't tell you that we sit and discuss your sermons, but we do. We do, and it's great. And we sit and talk and share, what do you think about? Well, that made me think about whatever, etc., which is good. Because I'm aware on a Sunday, you're busy talking about so many things, you don't sit and talk about the sermon. And I think that's been really encouraging that people have done that. And then we've had an evening service where we've had the online service with Zoom, and that's gone out to Facebook and to YouTube, and so it's up there during the week and all the rest of it. But we're drawing in people that were not part of our community before. And I think the challenge is, I think we just have to accept that when we open, they're not coming. And therefore, what we've historically thought about as our worshiping community is of people coming into a building. No, it really is about that going out again. And I think that's that, the radio in the morning who knows how many we're getting, but they're telling us that we're probably getting 2,000 to 3,000 people listening, which means that when, you know, Jill and Rob and all of you preach, you are preaching into 2,000 to 3,000 people's kitchens. That's amazing. That's incredible. And that ministry, I think, is. But again, when we open the doors, I doubt many of those people are going to come in, but we can't drop them. We can't let it go. You know, we've planted the seeds, and, you know, maybe it's taking the parable of the sower in the wrong way. We need to keep going, you know, and I think that's it. The challenge is going to be keeping going what we've done, and the stuff that, you know, in terms of the life of the church and in terms of the worship life of the church and all of that, that we've done. And I think that brings me on to my third point very quickly. I think 3 of my churches are preparing to open on Pentecost. And the challenge is managing expectations. And we've written to all the church members, and all the church members have had a letter that says, this is what you'll get. Because when we've spoken, oh, it's going to be so good to come back. I'm looking forward to singing hymns. I'm looking forward to having a chat with the coffee after the service. Looking forward to, no, you're not. And I think one of the things that some of our churches, Methodist churches that have opened, has discovered is people come for the first week, go, oh, it doesn't feel like it used to, and they don't come back. And the danger is that you've then got people who've come, been disappointed and left. It's how then do you somehow engage with them, because the danger is that having come back once, they won't come back again. And I think that's the real challenge.
Yes. Yes, there are plenty of challenges, aren't there?
Yeah, but there's only one God.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Okay, I think I'll try and just summarize, because we do want to honour what we said and finish it at 8 o'clock. I mean, I really thank you, everybody, for what you've brought. There's obviously a lot of common experience. There's I think, some very good ideas. I've tried to sort of be writing down a small number of bullet points to try and sort of summarize what has been said. And so I've got 4 words, or 4.5 words really. So the first 2 are to do, I think, with our people who we know are our church members, who we want to encourage and strengthen and help and everything. And I think those two words are communication and connection. That Lord, how can we best communicate to people? Like it's just been said, expectations, and then connection. People need and want to connect in some way. So helping people, even if it looks different from what they're used to or different from what they'd like, there've been some great ideas for connecting people. That's who we're made to be, isn't it? We're made to be social human beings. And then the other 2 words, I think, are, generally speaking, more to do with being outward looking. And I thank God that though none of us would have chosen to be in this situation, I think it's helped all of us to be more outward looking, to be more kingdom minded, if I might use that phrase, rather than just church minded. So like we really said, you know, let's look at ideas. Okay, now that wouldn't work exactly in my context, but maybe it would spark off another idea, and be conscious of outreach. So the 4th word is where it says 4.5, visitors or outreach. Making sure, for example, like it's been said at King's, you know, that we've got space for any visitors. We've had some people just turning up, which we never would have expected in this period of time, making sure we had space for them. But the ideas, say with the books, how can we connect with this group of people? And I completely agree with what Ian said, and others. We don't want to lose this group of people. So whereas in the past, for example, we might have, say, had a parent and toddler group, and we want to be able to resume those things. And you know, not everybody in that parent and toddler group is going to make the next step to church, or to actually knowing Jesus personally, but you still do it because you love people and you serve people. I think if we're going to do stuff online and keep doing it online, which I strongly recommend, it's another group like that, isn't it? It's people who are not yet ready to commit to Jesus, not yet ready to come into a church building, but we can reach some of those people and bless them and love them and pray that some of them do come in further. So I think there's a lot that God is stirring in us. Let me pray, and then I think that we'll call it an evening. Lord, we thank you so much, Lord, that we think of the spies going into the land, Lord, and there were giants in the land, but Lord, they're grasshoppers compared to you. And Lord, there are giants in our thinking, there are giants now in some of the challenges that lay before us. But I thank you, God, that you are never taken by surprise. You're never stuck for an answer, Lord. You're never stuck for inspiration. I thank you, God, that you give us grace, that you give us wisdom, you give us all that we need, Lord. That's your promise, Lord. And help us, Lord, to ask the right questions, Lord. What are you doing here, Lord? What are you doing in us? What are you doing in the community? What would you be saying to us? Where would you be taking us? God, give us vision, give us faith, give us confidence in who you are. Oh, Jesus, we pray, would you work in us and through us, even in these challenging times, Lord, in your mighty name. Amen.
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 Okay, well, thank you so much, everybody. It's been really interesting listening to different people in different contexts. I've certainly found it very helpful.
Rob,
So
could we give a plug to next week?
please do.
Next week is being led by John Squires. I'm only speaking for the tail section. I've only got the little bit at the end, but talking about communication and different ways that we can communicate and tell people what we're doing, and picking up on many of the themes that we've been talking about. So I think it's going to fit beautifully. So
Yes.
just a plug for that. That's at the same time next week.
Yeah, sure. This, as I said, this hopefully successfully. This has been recorded, so I'll be sending the link to Keith Armstrong, who's the main guy. He sends the emails round and everything, and so he'll be publishing the link. If you should want to look back on any of this again, or to refer it on to somebody else. Somebody else just come into reception. I hope that hasn't been too distracting. Okay, thanks ever so much, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
So enjoy the rest of your evenings. Bye now.
Good night.
Good night. Bye.